So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on supports to help you enter the early childhood education profession. My name is Robin Peel, and I'm the Community Economic Development Coordinator with Community Futures in East Kootenay. And I'm very fortunate to serve the whole of the East Kootenay region, but actually live in the beautiful area of Fernie, which is on the traditional and unceded territory of the Tanaha Nation and the chosen homeland of the Elk Valley Métis. And I feel very fortunate to be able to live here and live the life that I do on this wonderful land. Community Futures East Kootenay helps to foster strong, resilient local economies, and we do that across the whole of our vibrant East Kootenay region. And access to childcare places is obviously a really important part of having vibrant communities, which is why we're involved with this session tonight, and really helping promote the early childhood education sector across the region. And there's a great need, which we'll hear tonight, of early childhood educators, or we may refer to them as ECEs, as we all love a good acronym, across the whole area. And so we would love to have more people join this great profession. I am joined by some wonderful partners across the East Kootenay region, and they'll be helping me present on this tonight. And this will be followed by a question and answer session. So please, as we're going along, if there's anything that you're thinking, write it in the chat and we can answer it in the moment, or at the end, we can also turn off the recording and answer any questions you've got about the process as well. So tonight I am joined by Londa Morris from the Kootenay Employment Services. They hold the Work BC contract for most of the East Kootenay region and a great source of information for us tonight. Also have Colleen Watts from the East Kootenay Childcare Resource and Referral Centre who will be presenting, and Glenda Newstead, who's also from the Childcare Resource and Referral Centre across the whole of the interior region. And we also have Norma Sherritt on the call tonight, who is the Acting Dean of Health and Human Services at the College of the Rockies. And so she'll be able to answer any questions around the educational part of the ECE at the College of the Rockies. And we're also very fortunate to have Sydney, who works in Preston. And so she'll be able to actually tell the story of her experiences of going through training and then now working in the early childhood education sector. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to, I don't know if it's going to be Londa or Sydney's going to take the lead to start with. I am controlling the slides. So if someone just needs me to say next slide, then happy to do that as well. But I'll hand it over to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is the part where we'll invite Sydney to share a little bit about her experience of becoming an ECE and describing what a typical day in that life would look like.
Okay, so I graduated from university and I came to Creston for the summer with my parents just to take a break. And then I found an opportunity to become an ECE. It's for the one-year program through the College of the Rockies. And I've always liked working with children, looking after my cousins. So I decided to do more schooling, and it was a really good experience. And now I'm a supervisor for the daycare. And I'm able to substitute when they have vacation or absences, or they need a little bit of help, and I can check in with them. But if you were to be working at the daycare, at our daycare, it starts in the morning at 7:30 is when kids can start coming in. So usually the ECE will start a little bit earlier so they can prepare anything for the day, clean up maybe. And then so kids start coming in and it's mostly free play. And then around 9 is when we get the snacks prepared. And at our center, we're preparing the snacks ourselves. Some centers, the kids might bring their own snacks from home, or you might have bigger centers where snacks are prepared. But yeah, so we're preparing snacks. So it's kind of multitasking, watching the children while you're doing that. Then they have snack, they go back and play some more. And then you're maybe preparing for the activity, which could be a craft. And then they have craft time. And then around 11, we get to go outside. 12 is lunch. And then we have a little story time at 12:30. At our center, we have overlapping ECEs. So at 11, there will be another ECE come in, and that's because we want to overlap during the busy time. And so then we can all help out with getting kids ready to go back inside, outside, all that stuff. And then, yeah, we have story time or activity time at 12:30, and then we have nap time for the younger children and quiet time for the older children. And around 1:30 is when the morning EC will leave, and so the other ECs in the afternoon by themselves. And then, yeah, quiet time till snack time at 3, so preparing that again. And then depending on how the weather is or what you're up for, there's more free play activity, or we go outside until parents pick up. And our pickup deadline is by 4:30, and we clean up for the rest of and then we leave at 5. So I was like a lot of info, but a lot of multitasking and observing, and it's great. So yeah.
And what age, I'm interested in, do you have in your center?
Oh, yes, thank you. Multi-age center. So that means we can have 3 children under 3 years old and 8 in total under 5, or 5 and under. Yeah.
Fabulous. And is it, this is me actually being ignorant, so I'm going to ask the question as I'm going along. So there's just one ECE with the 8 kids at that time?
Yeah, that's the ratio. And yeah, that's why we have that overlap for so they're not, one person's not having a long day and then the overlap during the busy time.
Well, thank you for giving us that kind of day in a life. And we're then actually going to move on to Colleen to kind of talk about where you could work. So I think it's really great to kind of hear about what your center looks like, and then we're just going to talk a little bit about what are some of the other places that you can do once you're employed, so once you're qualified as an ECE. So Colleen.
Yeah, so there are different options. There's kind of the traditional daycare centers that you see around, and there's different age groups for that. There's under 3 years, which we kind of classify as an infant toddler room. There's 2.5 to 5 years old, which is kind of the preschool aged room. And then there's school age programs, and then multi-age programs like Sydney was talking about. You can also have an in-home multi-age. So that would be in the childcare provider's own home. And then there's preschool, which I think we all kind of know the gist of preschool. Usually you're only there for a couple hours, and there's usually, a morning class, afternoon class kind of thing. So yeah, when it comes to working in the childcare field, it can be quite flexible. Like, you're not restricted to working Monday through Friday, the traditional workday hours, the 8 to 4:30 or whatever that may be. There are a lot of programs out there who actually try to offer hours before, hours after those traditional hours, extended hours. Some programs are open weekends. In some areas in the East Kootenays, we actually have programs that say it's an in-home program and the provider's husband happens to work a specific shift at the mill. Sometimes that provider will cater to the families that work that same specific shift, and that will be the families that they provide care to. So, you're not restricted to the typical, Monday through Friday kind of normal workday hours. There are different options out there for you. And group sizes and like staff ratios, those kind of depend on the specific program or classroom that you are working in. So there's a lot of different information on that we could provide after the fact if somebody is curious about that. Yeah, and there's different staff qualifications. They kind of range from ECEA to ECE to ITE, which is the infant toddler educator. And then there's also SNE, which is the special needs educator. So yeah, there's different qualifications, lots of variables when you're looking at the childcare field. So as I said before, if anybody has specific questions, we'd be more than happy to answer those for you.
Absolutely. We'll go through those different kind of qualifications as well throughout the evenings, the ECEA and ECE. And actually, I know that in Elkford, they've just opened or just opened or about to open a 24-hour childcare centre. So I think that's a really interesting kind of concept again, right? So things are changing all the time, and I really agree, Colleen, that this can actually make it work for you. It's a career that actually you can justify and work around your own process and needs as a human being. One thing we do want to kind of talk about is the salary options, and at the moment, because it is such a high need area, there's a number of wage subsidies that exist, and they exist from the BC provincial government is doing them, and also we have the Columbia Basin Trust at the moment topping up some of the wage subsidies in the area as well. We can't obviously guarantee that these wage subsidies will exist forever, but definitely the BC government at the moment has really confirmed their commitment to the early childhood sector, and their wage subsidies for the next little while. So at the moment, the average wage of a qualified early childhood educator in the East Kootenays can be between $21 and $28 an hour, which is great. Some facilities at the moment are also offering signing bonuses. So again, that's something to look at, that if there is something in your area, because they are looking for early childhood educators, there may be some extra funds that some centres will do. And obviously, depending on the employer and how they are set up, there may be other benefits such as healthcare benefits and extra holidays, etc. So really, I think it's a sector that is needed. It's a sector that at the moment is fairly well paid, and also because it is a need, you may be able to talk to future employers about what might be possible once you get there as well. So we do have Norma here from the College of the Rockies. So I'll do a quick overview, and then Norma, if you want to mention anything, please add on to this. And then Sydney, if you want to mention anything of your experience of going through the training at the College of the Rockies as well. So to become a qualified early childhood educator, you are required to take a course from an approved institution. And College of the Rockies here in the East Kootenays, based in Cranbrook, is one of those. There's a one-year certificate program to become this qualified ECE, and at the moment it starts in September each year. They are looking at other potential starting times in future years, and there also is, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, there is one course you can actually start every month as well before then, so that you could actually get started before September. If that's something you really want to get involved with right now following this presentation, which we'd love if that's going to happen, then there is a course that we'll talk about very shortly that you can start on as well. So it can be done full or part-time. As I said, it's a one-year course, so if it's part-time, it obviously takes longer than that. And it is done mainly online, although the practicum placements do happen in your community. So you do actually go within that 1 year to an early childhood education centre and do your practicum placement. There are fees, which you can see there at the moment, are about just nearly $4,000, but we will go through tonight some of the options that can exist to help pay for some of that training as well. So that's why we're here. There is training supports available at the moment, so we will go through those tonight. So I'm not sure, Norma, if there's anything regarding the program that you want to add in from the College of the Rockies perspective, and then I'll hand over to Sydney to maybe mention about her experience.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I think the program outline that's in the link there is very helpful for people who need more information. We do have a program coordinator. Her name is Heather Wick, and we can certainly link you with Heather to get more information as well. And I just wanted to pick up on the fact that the certificate level, as Robin has outlined, is it's 10 months, so it starts in September. The fall semester has 7 courses in it. The winter course has 6, and one of those courses would be a practicum. And then the spring semester is practicum plus 2 remaining theory courses. So it's it's a heavy load. It's certainly an achievable load, but people thinking about it as taking the full-time option to be finished in 10 months really need to think about it as a full-time job. And so for that reason, as Robin has said, many people do choose to do it part-time because they will begin the program, pick up one of the courses that Robin has alluded to get them working in a center, and then they can continue to work towards the certificate. And quite often students, when they complete the program and get working in a center, and Sydney may speak to this as well, then go on to finish the diploma, which gives them those specialties that we talked about earlier in terms of the infant toddler specialty or the special needs specialty. So again, there's lots of options. And if you start the certificate program, you have 3 years to complete courses in order to achieve those, to achieve the credential. And then that's the credential that needs to be achieved in order to be considered an early childhood educator at that certificate level.
Fabulous, thank you. And Sydney.
So I did my course, I think back in 2019, and I did the full year, just 1 year program. And then it was nice because once you have one of the needed courses to become an ECE assistant, I was able to also work at the daycare a little bit of the time. And it's really nice to be able to apply your learning right away. And this is why the practicums are great too, because all that stuff you just learned, you can apply it right away in a center with somebody to supervise, so you can ask questions. And the courses were all very applicable, all very useful, like how to communicate in different ways, and like planning snacks, and even planning your ratios. Like if you want to start up your center, how big should the area be for each children? And they kind of touch on some points in the licensing regulations. And so, yeah, it was enjoyable.
And Adam, interestingly, are you in touch with any of the people you still did the course with? Like, are they still kind of a resource for you, or are they in the area still?
I had one of their students that I had with, but otherwise, no, because I ended up becoming a supervisor sooner than. Anyways, yeah, sorry. Well, the place I did my practicum with was our center, and this was with Kathy Cherry, and she's been working forever, and she was really great guide. So she was the person I asked when I had questions. So yeah.
Fabulous. No, it's good. It's just one of those things, again, that you're not doing this alone too when you do it, right? You do have the practicum and the people
yes.
that support you, and other people. It's not just you by yourself at home and learning this stuff as well. So no, thank you. Fabulous. So we're going to move on to as we've just been alluding to, actually, the early childhood education assistant and how that can be a way to enter the process. So Glenda, I'll leave that for you.
Awesome, thank you. Well, this is what I did. Sydney touched on it a little bit. When I started my early childhood education journey, I was at a point where I wasn't able to commit to doing schooling first full time. I needed to work and do schooling. So I opted for the ECE assistant journey. And so I took an initial course, applied through the ECE registry, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to get that assistant certificate, sought employment, and was doing coursework and working. So to become an ECEA assistant, as Sydney talked about, there are a few options that you can do. So it's basically completing one of the courses listed there. So a health and safety and nutrition course, a child guidance course, or a child development. There are also options for those who have done certification outside of BC, so in another Canadian province or territory. So again, that would be connecting with the ECE registry to work through that. I do want to highlight that the College of the Rockies is doing something really fabulous right now, is that they are offering their ECED course 113, which is their health, safety, and nutrition course on a monthly basis between September and April of 2022. So this is a great way to, even if you're curious about the field, want to try it out, take the course, apply for your assistance, and then, as Sydney was alluding to, is you get to that immediate application of your learning. And the coursework, what I find with all ECE courses, regardless of the institution that you're doing your training with, is it really is that immediate theory to practice. So you really get to apply what you're learning. And for me as a learner, I know I really appreciated that feedback. The other thing that I do want to highlight, which links in Work BC, of which we have multiple offices around in the East Kootenay, is that if you are currently unemployed or underemployed, you may be able to access the Columbia Basin Trust Training Bursary. So that fund is administered by Work BC, hence the need to connect with their office sites. And I understand that it can cover up to about $1,000 per course. So again, you would need to be connecting with the Work BC to see if you're eligible and to work through that process.
Excellent.
So
who's talking about the registry? No, is it Glenda or Colleen? I don't know who's doing this one.
Well, we'll tag team it. And so this is a really great thing, because when I was an ECE assistant, I actually worked with Colleen. So you can meet people and you can have colleagues and then find them in other aspects of the earlier sector. So that I find really exciting. Colleen, do you want to tackle 1 and 2, and then I can follow up with number 3 there?
Okay, so so the ECE 5-year certificate, just as it says, they're able to work alone or as the primary educator in a licensed childcare program. Yeah, and you can work alongside an infant toddler educator in an infant toddler room. And then for the ECE 1-year certificate, allows you to work as a fully certified ECE while completing your 500 hours under the supervision of a certified ECE. But that can only be renewed once. So.
And one thing that I don't know that we've clearly mentioned here is that when we talk about the ECE registry, and Sydney, I know, talked about ratio and licensing, is in BC, we have the childcare licensing regulation. So this is law that actually provides guidelines, directions, regulation on how childcare in those licensed facilities. So if you recall that types of childcare slide that Colleen spoke to, there's actually regulation about how those childcare license settings are managed, staffed, the hours, how you're interacting with children, how you're doing your programming. So there is guidelines for that regulation. And that also ties into, in our region, interior health. There are licensing officers who are there to help with that application for childcare settings who are applying for that license, as well as coming in and checking and being a source of support. And I would also highlight, because this falls under the role of Colleen and then also myself too, is we have childcare resource and referral centers. So we're focusing really heavily on the training aspect, but then once you're successful in actually operating as an ECE or an ECE assistant, there are lots of supports and resources that exist to help you in that day-to-day.
And I have just put into the chat there for anyone the link to the BC Government Early Childhood Educators process, which kind of talks you through the registry as well. So that's obviously a stage once you do your courses, so either your 1 course to become an ECEA or your full 1-year certificate. But if anyone is interested, that is the full information through the BC registry, through the BC Government, is in the chat there as well. So you can peruse.
And I'll just interrupt, sorry, Robin, just to say that this is a great role of the childcare resource and referrals. If after you look at that website, connect with the childcare resource and referral, because they can talk that through. They're staffed by early childhood educators, so they know this process, they've been through it, and they're a great source of support.
And I'm going to, I was going to link them up, but why did that not go through? Maybe Colleen, if you want to put your link to your website as well. It'd be great to put that in there as well, the East Kootenay. And I'll keep going on. Actually, no, I don't need to go on. Londa's going to come on next. Londa's going to talk about the Work BC and some of the supports that exist to access this training at potentially a reduced rate.
Yeah. So this is something that a lot of people don't realize, that there's funding available for education. And, you know, it just drives me crazy when I meet people and they say like, oh, I didn't realize that there was money available for this and I paid for it myself. So this is really important information to get out there into the communities. So we operate a Work BC center here in Creston, but we also operate sites in Cranbrook, Invermere, Fernie, and every community, whether it might not be run by us, but every community has a Work BC site or Work BC staff who serve that community. across the whole of the province. So anywhere you live, you can go in to see a Work BC Center. And basically, especially for the ECE funding, if you are determined to be eligible for funding, then you can actually have pretty much all of your tuition covered, paid for, and you can also receive living support. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to be in financial hardship for that year, but that's not necessarily the case, because we can provide living supports, a living allowance for you that we determine based on your financial situation, how much you would need. And we can pay for things like transportation, textbooks, we can pay for childcare, we can pay for any clothing that you need to start the job or do your practicum placement. So this is such a valuable resource. And there's a lot of questions about who is eligible for this kind of funding. And I would really encourage anyone to come in and speak with us, because we do have eligibility criteria, but it's also very much individual. So if we could sit down and talk to you about your situation, and you might not even meet exactly the criteria, but we can sometimes even apply to the ministry for an exception, even if you don't meet the criteria. So, but typically we're looking for someone who's unemployed or working less than 20 hours, or who's in a situation where they're not having their financial needs met. So they might be working full time, but not able to earn enough to support their children or their family. Or maybe the hours that they're working are not really good for them because they have children. Different situations like that are really unique individual circumstances. We can apply for exceptions if you don't meet that basic criteria. So always good to come in and see us and talk to us, and we'll figure out if you're eligible.
I've just got a question. I'm not sure who the best person to answer this is, so I'll just ask generally, and
Yep.
whoever can have the answer. It's just that someone is saying they would need to be working full time while completing the course. Is there any flexibility or options to complete a practicum while working full time at a different job? So if you weren't working in that, is anyone able to talk about that?
Norma's thinking.
And I think I might have an answer, but I think I might need to have the question repeated.
Okay, so sure. It's just saying the question was saying, so someone needs to be working full time while completing the course, just to keep their needs met. Although, to be honest, maybe they can talk to the Work BC, as Londa just said, and there might be some options there as well. But they're saying, are there any options or flexibility to complete a practicum while working full time at a different job?
I would say from the college perspective, that faculty really encourage students to take advantage of other funding opportunities because it is very challenging to meet the practicum hour requirement if you're trying to work at the same time. Often, like for the certificate level, you're also doing coursework amidst doing practicum. So there's also assignments and group projects and things like that you are engaged with alongside the hours that you're putting in your practice site. So we really try to support students and guide them. We've got education advising services at the college as well, and then linking with folks like Work BC, and making our students aware of opportunities through our financial aid office as well, that they can apply for bursaries, scholarships, those kinds of things to help offset the burden of the costs.
One other thing I was going to add in there is that if someone is working full time but comes to see us and they say, well, I'd like to go back to school to become an ECE, if they are eligible for our program, we could also, and if they're agreeable, we could apply for an authorization to quit. So we would be requesting permission for them to quit their job, and then they would be eligible for EI supports, and we could sometimes top those up. So they wouldn't need to worry about income during that time, because they would be receiving supports from us while they're completing their training. So that's just another option to put out there.
So I would say to that person, go see your local Work BC
Yes.
office. And
I'll just add to that, in the Columbia Basin, we're quite lucky because we do have Columbia Basin Trust. And again, this isn't at this point something that, we know how long this will continue, but Columbia Basin Trust currently has a ECE training wage program. This isn't for individuals to apply for this is for employers to apply to the program. However, it's another motivation to consider going for your ECE Assistant Certificate. If you are then working for a center that is successfully a part of this CBT ECE training wage program, there could be potential funding to be compensating you as you're training and working in that role if they're a part of that program. So again, it's not an individual program or individual application. It would be an employer. So it is something that exists. There are other opportunities. I would say that right now too, childcare in British Columbia we're at a really exciting time because we're really creating a new system and moving towards a universal childcare system. So I do think that we have lots of great things such as wage enhancements and whatnot that exist now. Who knows what will exist in another year or 2 years? I think that we're moving towards hopefully seeing some really innovative ways of supporting people coming into the field and staying in the field. So I think it's something to really contemplate and keep your eye on, because I do think there'll be some future opportunities for support.
And what we will make sure to do also at the end of this is we will send out contact details on all the websites as well. So just making sure that you have all these people that you can go and support, because it's such a needed sector, we want to make sure that it makes it as easy as possible to help you access as well. Someone else has just asked a question, which I'm again going to open to the audience, to the experts, not to me. How many hours or days would an ECE assistant need to be working to qualify for the funding to complete training? Does anyone know that?
So from a Work BC's perspective, it would be better for you to be working less to qualify for Work BC living supports and funding. And if you started working over more like full-time hours, we might have to pull back our funding. But that's the Work BC side. And then you might be asking about CBT, like how many hours would you need to be? And I don't think there's a minimum. I think you just need to be employed with an employer, but I'll have to go and check that to be sure.
So yeah, and definitely the more that you can ask these questions, we can find that you come into Work BC office, they can start finding it all out and working individually with each person as well. So and then we will go on to the final slide, which is just some other supports for training, which I'll pass over to Colleen. So not if this is something else that if you're not able to go for the Work BC, there are some other supports that you might be able to go for.
And something else I forgot to mention, the Work BC part, sorry, was that we do also have an Indigenous case manager who can provide supports to clients who come in to our office and identify as Indigenous. There's additional supports that are available, financial supports as well, including they can work together with our Work BC site to look at supports for tuition and living supports and transportation, textbooks, things like that. So you would again just come in to see us, and then we would help support you connect you with that Indigenous support worker. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, so for the last slide here, other supports for training. So there is the ECE Education Support Fund. There's seasonal intakes for it though. It's not necessarily available all the time, and it is in high demand. So it's not a guaranteed thing for people, but you potentially can access up to $4,000 to a max of 8 courses. You have to have secured a spot in school and then apply for the funding. So you receive the funding after, like basically you have to pay for your course up front. Once you have completed the course and you submit your documentation, then you get reimbursed for the training that you've completed. So yeah, that's how the Education Support Fund works. And then just in other supports, once you even during your journey of schooling or after, once you've completed it, as Glenda kind of spoke to before, CCRRs are here to support you. That is why we're here. We can support you in a variety of different ways. I mean, when it comes to your schooling, Right now, this isn't every CCRR, but the East Kootenay one, the one that I work for, that's located in Cranbrook, we cover all of the East Kootenays. So if you are a resident here and you want to take that health, safety, and nutrition course, we have a lending library that we actually have the textbooks available to borrow for that. I mean, we only have, a certain amount of textbooks. So, depending, there might be a wait list for them, but that is still an option. It helps you save some money, not having to purchase those textbooks. I mean, we're here for anything any of the childcare professionals need. I mean, we can go into the programs and do direct support if that's what they're requesting. Like I said, we have the toy lending library. So, and we do outreach to all the different areas at least once a month. So we can bring toys, we can bring resources out to your programs. We put on different workshops and training opportunities and conferences. And there's just a variety of supports that we can provide to you. If you just are having a day where you need to talk to someone, we're here. So please utilize us. And if you have questions about, this, say, tomorrow or the next day, you start kind of thinking about things and you have some questions, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help with whatever questions you have. If we don't have the answers, we'll find them for you.
I think that's so wonderful. From my limited knowledge of being involved in the early childhood education world, is that everyone is there to support and really make this the easiest and the best it can be. So please use that. It's not just being said, it is actually totally meant as well. So please make sure that you use that. And other questions come through, and this might be actually a bit too specific, so we might get them to get in touch with you, Colleen, at the East Kootenay Childcare Resource and Referral Centre. It's just someone who is not from Canada, they're an immigrant to Canada, and they do have a certificate in ECE and also a master's in SPED, which I'm not sure what that is, but someone may know what that is. And they're just saying what they need if they want to get ECE training. So I'm not sure if that's getting Canadian certified or not. So I don't know if Colleen or Glenda want to talk about kind of that process, if they know.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think there's two answers to the question, or two suggestions. I will put a link in after I finish talking to the ECE registry. They have a newly updated website as of February 17th, 2022, that clearly outlines the different pathways, but there is a very specific section for those who have done their education outside of Canada, and that will show you what that process looks like to work towards your certification for your ECE certificate with the registry, which again is different than a training institution ECE certificate. And then I think the second part would definitely could either be following up with the College of the Rockies or the East Kootenay CCRR, just to explore those training opportunities. If I'm not sure how recent your training was, maybe you're looking to refresh your skills or just to dive into the education here in Canada, but that I would suggest those three things. So connecting with a variety, and I will pop that link into the chat.
Thank you so much. And yeah, and I guess if you are already qualified and it's just about getting upskilled, then it sounds like there's continuing professional development to run through the CCRRs. So again, linking with them and Colleen and her team would be amazing. Someone's asked, is there any specific criteria to be accepted into the ECE program at the College of the Rockies? And I do believe there is, so Norma, I'll pass that over to Norma.
Thank you, Robin. Yes, so our admission criteria, and this is the ECE program sits within our CYFS program suite of programs. That's the Child, Youth and Family Studies. And so for all of those programs within that portfolio, ECE being one of them, the academic admission requirements are completion of grade 12, like secondary school, or equivalent. So there is a process where you can be assessed as well, or you can do upgrading through the college to meet the entrance requirement. And within that entrance requirement, then you have to achieve 65% or higher in English 12 or equivalent. And there's about 4 different courses that are recognized as equivalent, or again, you can be assessed. You would come in and do a written exam, and then that would be assessed and you would be scored and sit within the requirement there. The other thing that's good to be aware of is there's again, the Child, Youth and Family Studies programs has common admissions package. So you would apply, and if you met the admission requirements, then you would be sent an admission package. And part of the admissions package also includes the non-academic program requirements. And that includes proof of immunization status, again, because, you know, we're working with children. And that's a registry requirement as well to promote the health and safety of everybody in those settings. And I think certainly we've learned from our lived experience with COVID how quickly things can be spread. So immunization status is one thing, and there's an opportunity to work towards the types of immunizations that you would need, and we can link you to the health unit in your community to do that. A criminal records check that needs to be provided through the Solicitor General's office. And the final thing is really just that you have a good command of both spoken and written English, because just like Sydney talked about, you're applying, you're learning very quickly and in that work-based setting. And so to be able to communicate clearly with children, of course, with families, and with your colleagues and supervisor, those are the ways in which you'll be engaging. You'll learn in the program, but that your language skills are such that will support you in those roles.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Is there any other questions to be had? Either you can unmute yourself if you want to do that and talk, or you can message either me directly right now or generally. I will just say now that someone did ask, there will be a recording of this. As I said, we are recording this, so I will share that out to participants if you want to think about some of the stuff you've heard, and we'll also be putting that out wider as well. And as I said, we'll also, when we send the recording out, we'll send some links to some of the key things we've mentioned tonight, so you can have that information to access the East Kootenay Childcare Resource and Referral Centre. The Work BC offices will link to all of them in the community, and College of the Rockies, and all the links there as well. So I'll give another minute or two if anyone has a question. But I would just like to say thank you to everyone for giving up some of your time. Oh, there's another one. That's great. Giving up your time tonight to come and learn about this. And we do hope that this has been of use to you, and that you do come and actually use some of the processes and supports to make it happen. Another question, is this a specific way that students are assigned to practicum placements? For example, are there different placements in different communities? And I know that we have talked about this because we live in rural, small communities. There's always not that many practicums. So I don't know if Norma, you want to mention that, or Glenda, no, I'll go to Norma to start with anyway.
Sure. So we do have a practicum coordinator that sits as part of the student learning process, and she reaches out and connects with students, because I think something else we should mention that I don't know that we've talked about this evening is that the ECE program at the college is offered both online and through blended, so face-to-face and some online learning, depending again, so that it's more flexible for people who are already working, or if you're in a community that's not close to the college campus. The face-to-face programming happens out of the Cranbrook campus. So for practicums, it's important that students are able to be placed in their local community or as close to their community as possible. And so that would be negotiated with the practicum coordinator when you're in the program. So your first practicum starts in the winter. And so those conversations with our practicum coordinator happen. She reaches out to students usually about the end of September, early October. And just to get you to fill out the application so that she can understand where you're at. And if you have a link to an agency already, then that she will follow up with that. We've got a lot of partnership. This program has been running for about 30 years now through the college. And so we've got lots of partnerships and connections to practice placements. So that's sort of the quick and easy answer.
And I think if you are someone who is at an ECEA and working at one childcare centre, they do try and say it would be good to do your practicum somewhere else. So you get to see what other places look like as well, right? So kind of don't spend all your time in one place, to learn from as many people as possible. So that is another option as well, as to, well, not one, that is recommended as well, as to go and experience different practicum placements, just if you're working somewhere as well. But we are aware that across the East Kootenays, besides in Cranbrook, we are smaller communities, and the number of places that you can be placed may be limited just because of the size of the population side of childcare centres that are there. But definitely there are lots of different places for you to be placed while there. Is there anything that Colleen, Glenda, Sydney, Londa or Norma want to say before we finish off, or see if any other questions come through? We're all good.
I'll just say I'm going to be a cheerleader for this sector. I think it is an exciting time. One thing that we haven't talked a little bit about too is the opportunity for doing outdoor work. This doesn't necessarily have to exist 24/7 indoors. There are lots of amazing programs and educators doing really fabulous early childhood education in the outdoors in conjunction, because of licensing regulation, with indoor facilities. But it is, I think, if you're looking for diverse, creative, hands-on work, it's a really exciting sector to be in. And like I said, we're in a time of transition, and I think we're headed towards some really exciting time. And so it's a good time to be a part of it. And just a few other things that we haven't talked about in BC, we have the early learning framework. This is a framework that goes from birth to 8 years of age. So again, it's a bit of a guide for early childhood educators and assistants. Because it goes to 8 years, it then obviously overlaps with the school age. And so there's really great relationships that are developing between the early years sector and our school system and whatnot. And I think there's lots of opportunity for growth as well in this sector. So listening to Sydney's story, she quickly obviously sort of experienced moving up the ladder there, but I think too, and just in my own personal experience, there have been very diverse experiences that I didn't necessarily anticipate when I entered the field.
If I could add to the early learning framework point, they do have free online modules for that. So if you want to peek at just early, like in general, you can take, I think there's 6 modules or maybe less with 3 quizzes, and you can get little certificates from them. It's good to do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Colleen, Glenda, Londa, Norma, and Sydney. It's really great to have you all here tonight and sharing your experiences. And thank you all to everyone else who is here learning as well. And we look forward to hearing from you in various ways, hopefully in the next few weeks and months as you take this on, and look forward to you joining the early childhood education sector in the East Kootenays. So thank you all. Now, enjoy your evening.